Been a while, hasn't it? So I know that I've still been commenting on a lot of the videos that you guys have, been interacting with. I said I would do it. I'm doing it now. There's been a lot of delays going on, mostly from the current job that I'm working with. Um, I've been in Cali for the last 5 weeks. Driving back was definitely a trip. I'm not talking your normal commute trip, but like being on LSD without being on LSD. Um, so on that note, keep it short and simple. Um, Basically, I've had a lot of things going on between life, screwing me over and whatever, and a bunch of other things. And right now, I have that free time. I am, chopping up videos, trying to make things work. And then, right as I was working on one of my videos, my ISP decided to cut me off because I was using too much upload. No data cap, up to 100 megabit upload, um, and no contracts. So I'm no lawyer, but I do smell a lawsuit. Besides that fact, I've had the wonders of working with AT&T here. They provided me a wonderful little hotspot, and I only pay an extra $30. No, this is an AT&T advertisement. I'm actually genuinely pleased with the service that I've received, and I've made a little conundrum here with my dual WAN setup on my unified Dream Machine. So all that out of the way, what we're going to jump into today is setting up FreePBX start to finish within a Windows host environment using VirtualBox. Now, VirtualBox is my first go-to. Everyone, has at least heard about it from what I understand. It's free. It's not like VMware Player where you may need a license to do some extra things. VMware Player by itself too. I don't even know if they sell Player by itself. Um, they sell like Workstation. It's supposed to be some more enterprise whatever. My point is, VirtualBox is the first go-to, so that's what I'm going to start on today. For whatever virtual system that you may use, it's pretty straightforward across the board. If you use something like ESXi, or it's also known as vSphere, if you use something like Proxmox, like I do, you'll be able to usually find guides. It's pretty straightforward. Just get it set up. I'll give you guys, what I use basics wise, and then just plug in the ISO disk. So we're gonna get started now. I'm gonna shut up. First off, um, go ahead, go to freepbx.org/downloads. And as you can see here, you'll download the FreePBX distro. Sometimes, yeah, no, I'm not gonna fill that out. Sometimes you can get away with doing something like this. SNG7, PBX 16, 64-bit. You want to download the 64-bit 9 times out of 10. It doesn't make sense to download 32-bit unless your laptop or desktop is only 32-bit or you're downloading this to a 32-bit only system. But we're talking almost over 10 years old on a device. I don't judge, if that's the route you want to go, not whatever. But we'll go ahead, we'll do this one, just latest edition, full ISO. And as you can see, it's going to take us a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video right here. And yeah, I'll show you guys that once it downloads. Once you've downloaded your ISO for FreePBX, what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and we're going to create a new virtual machine. Oh, no, wrong button. New. Call this FreePBX. You can call it whatever you want. And the ISO image will be what we used. Download it right here. Then we'll go ahead and skip unattended installation and hit next. I prefer to give it 8 gigs of memory, or 8,192 megabytes. You can give it 4,096, which is 4 gigs, although that's the kind of more minimum recommended. And then for processors, I prefer to give it 4 cores. And then we'll go ahead and hit next. 20 gig hard drive. Next. Verify everything's good here. And before we start off, we're going to go down to network, and our attached to will be, let's see, bridged adapter. And this will be to our current Ethernet. We'll hit OK and start. Now what this is going to do is once we power the VM up, it's going to launch the ISO and start booting into it. Once you get this, you're going to go ahead, go to FreePBX 16 asterisk 18, the recommended, and then graphical installation output to VGA. FreePBX standard, and let that start. Then you're going to go ahead, let it install, do its thing, and what you've essentially done with your network is, imagine this is your host. Instead of your VM connecting inside of the host and then using the host as your gateway, you're actually connecting the VM to your internal network, which is what we've got here. I did this, that way you don't have to forward ports outside of your computer just to access the machine. Sometimes it's necessary. I prefer just to get it out all the way. Not only that, but it gives it more network room, so to say. It's a little hard to explain here, but you're just going to have a lot better of a time if you just directly connect it to your network instead of doing something like a NAT where you're having to push your VM traffic through your computer, basically. So, go ahead, we'll set a root password. Unfortunately, you can't set something as easy as password. Obviously, don't do that in production environments. So, for this demonstration, we're going to do yeehaw, it's Jake, all one word and all lowercase. Go away. Thank you. And done. Now this is going to take a minute, so I'm going to go ahead, let this install and do its thing, and then we'll come right back to it, jump right into it, and we'll go ahead and log into that web panel. Okay, once your install is finished, you can go ahead and hit reboot. Oh, if I can find my mouse. Just like that, it'll restart itself. Give it just a quick minute here. Might have a small problem. No, stop it. My particular version of VirtualBox likes to act up. The files were installed, it just doesn't want to see them. So, go ahead, restart it. Stop it. File. Machine. Set. And one. There we go. Give it a minute to load here real quick. All right. So now we're going to log in using the username root and the password to what you set it to earlier. For example, we set ours to yeehaw, it's Jake, all one password. You can see here our IP address is 10.0.0.105. So we'll go over here. We can now configure our username. This can be like company name or your administrator name. And then, sure, I guess we'll let Firefox do it. You can set a notifications email address. We're going to set this to noemail@example.com because we don't want that. I have used this before. All it really does is it sends you a little email saying, hey, we're updating this module. This module needs updated. There's a security update for this because of this risk. Things like that. You can set it to configure other things as well, like this trunk failed, or we're having problems making outbound calls doing this, this, and this. There's all sorts of things you could really use it for. And system identifier, this is just your host name. Just set to Glabagoo for fun. And I prefer to have automatic module updates enabled, as well as automatic security module updates. And unsigned security modules will be unsigned modules will be a no. And finally, go ahead, update that. Go to FreePBX administration with our new login. Just like that, we've now set up FreePBX. We won't activate it just yet. In this video, I won't be doing that only because I already have an activated system. I just don't have it available right now. Go ahead, skip through all the ads, yada, yada, yada. Thank you. English. And I prefer to turn off the firewall. If you are using your PBX in an environment that is in a demilitarized zone or DMZ, or where this is directly connected to the internet, take for example, this is your modem, right? You're directly connecting to this to internet. This means that your PBX can be seen with all of its ports open if there is anything open. So I highly recommend having the firewall enabled then. Otherwise, if you have it behind something like an OpenSense gateway, Unified Gateway, PFSense, FortiGate, anything like that, then that's when I would disable the firewall, because then you're going to start getting conflicts in. I haven't had too much trouble with it when I have accidentally enabled it in the past. However, I have seen other situations and matters with that. So for this, we're just going to go ahead and abort it. Resend. We don't want substation. And voila. So we're going to go ahead, we'll minimize this and this. And now to get started, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and go down to trunks. This is where you're going to get started adding in your trunk provider. Each trunk provider typically has configuration documentation available online. So, for example, VoIP.ms. Or maybe not. Give me one moment here. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of with VoIP.ms, and I'm iffy on if I choose to really advertise it out there, is that their web application firewall, as you've just seen, is very sensitive. I'm only running a mobile data connection. It's not like I'm, running some sort of VPN or I'm actively running bot traffic. I barely have 40 megabits upload and download to use. However, we can still access the wiki, so we're going to go ahead and use that. So if you head over to wiki.voip.ms, you'll be able to see everything here, and then you can head down to configuration samples, and finally PBXs. If you head down, where's FreePBX number 8 right here, and then FreePBX, PBX in a flash, configuration, and right here is all the information available for you in setting up your trunk for the first time. Your trunk is what tells FreePBX, hey, connect to this server with these credentials so that we can establish a SIP connection and start sending and receiving calls. So with VoIP.ms and FreePBX, the VoIP.ms documentation is a little outdated. Unfortunately, there's no ability to really have a CHAN SIP trunk. It's now a custom trunk. I've had a lot more success with the IX2 trunk, so that is what we're going to use. In the past, when I've used the custom or CHAN SIP trunk, whatever you want to call it, I've encountered issues where there's authentication problems or I wasn't able to receive inbound calls. There's all sorts of little weird things going on. So we're just going to go ahead and we're going to go down back to our administration, add trunk, and we're going to add an IX2. So we'll call this trunk name VoIP MS. And the caller ID, your outbound caller ID, is what will show up when you call someone from your PBX to your phone. This should only be set to either a phone number you actually own, or B, a custom number if you are sending this call to someone who consents to testing. So basically only in a testing environment. Sometimes you may want to use this for whatever reason, for testing purposes. Maybe if you're trying to diagnose a stir shaking issue, all sorts of things. So for this example, because we already have our our outbound caller ID set on VoIP MS itself, and we're not using it custom with our PBX, I'm going to leave this empty. Set it to allow any CID, maximum channels can be empty. We're just going to leave everything else here alone. And for dialed number manipulation rules, what you're going to do is you're going to create a 7, 10, and 11 digit pattern, disable US emergency, and enable US toll free. I don't like to have any of these other ones only because I don't use them. If you do, go ahead, click it to enable it, click it once again to disable it. Pretty basic, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to generate those routes. So once that's finished, IX2 settings, and this is where you're going to start implementing everything from the VoIP MS page or whatever your configuration on Wiki may be. This might be like Twilio, Telnex, things like that. And then we're going to import it into our FreePBX system. So head down here. We are not using the SIP trunk. We are using our IX2 trunk. There it is. So IX2 trunk, from here, use the following example to configure IX2 trunk. Set your trunk name, it's different from SIP trunks and must be VoIP MS. So trunk name, VoIP MS. Easy to start out with. Outbound call ID. This can be a removed from your extension settings. We already have that set up. And your outgoing settings. So as you can see right here, this looks similar to what's in your peer details. And this is your outgoing settings. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy everything in this dotted box. Control C and Control V. Type friend, your username. And I'm going to leave this here for now because I have my configuration. But we are not going to authenticate with this on... I'm not going to send you guys my creds, basically. So, keep this empty. Context from trunk, host. See, I believe I have mine set to denver.voip.ms. Disallow all, allow law, insecure, port, comma, invite, require call token no, and qualify yes. And for incoming, what you're going to do, user context, confirm. Okay. So, nothing user context, user details will be blank, and your register string, finally right here, will be what is set here. So, once again, with VoIP MS, you have your username. That's like 123456, a little 6-digit code. And then your secret or your password. So it's going to be your username, colon, your password, at whatever POP destination that you use. Typically, it's whatever you want closest to you. So, like, Washington users are Seattle, Colorado users are Denver. I believe there's an LAX, but there's also San Francisco. There's a couple other ones. They have a full list of them, basically. So we'll use Denver here, .voip.ms, colon, this is your port 4569, and we're not going to change this. Sorry. Still trying to recover from a cold. So we'll keep that just like that, and we'll go ahead and submit it. Might tell you, hey, do you want to define a caller ID because it's important, you might have issues otherwise. We're going to hit OK and ignore it. Just like that, we're ready to go online. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to apply the correct configuration in the background for me. You should verify your configuration, that is correct, and then we'll get started on the next step. Okay, after some excruciating pain dealing with VoIP MS, yeah, I think that's the last time I really recommend them as a production level trunk provider. Good for testing, not so much for reliability, I would say. Not going to get into the details, but I had to reset my password because their system only allows alphanumeric and this character and yada 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 for an insecure password. But then, yeah, I don't know. Regardless, we're back online. I'm going to show you guys how to verify that you're connected. So, as you can see, we've established our trunk now. And if we head down to reports and asterisk info, should be able to see here. Yep, there it is. So VoIP MS, our username, the host we're connected to, and status okay. Means everything's good. We're now connected. And as we can see here, if we refresh our registration status, sometimes it can take a few minutes, but you should usually see that you are connected, and then the user agent that your PBX is connected with, which is usually like FreePBX 14 or whatever your version is, and then the asterisk version you're using. Yeah, that's being weird. So, regardless, we're set up now. We can now set up our routes. So, our next step would be connectivity, and then trunks. We have our trunk here. So then connectivity and outbound routes will be what's next. Don't mind me, I can't speak English. So, what your outbound routes is when you call outbound from your PBX to someone else, what you're doing is you're saying, hey, if it matches any one of these patterns, go ahead and use these trunks. Normally, you're just going to use one outbound route because all you have is one trunk provider, but some of the other more advanced systems may have multiple trunk providers with multiple different outbound routes so as to establish such low latency when performing calls. Not anything we're really going to get into today's video. I don't even have the money to set something up like that, but just for example, that's usually where you might see something like more outbound routes, right? So route name, once again, we'll just do default outbound. Route CID we'll leave alone. We don't need a route password. Music on hold, we can just keep the default. Use system time zone. And then permanent route, as well as we set our trunk sequence for match routes to that VoIP MS trunk we used earlier. An optional destination on congestion, you can just hit normal congestion. If you want to have a little fun with it, this is where you can start really getting into routing with VoIP MS or really any PBX, for example. You can go anywhere you want to. So like terminate call, we can just do hang up. We can place a caller on hold forever. So should this trunk fail for whatever reason, if we have too many outbound calls going on, or VoIP MS rejects our call due to some server issue, and FreePBX processes that as congestion, there's all sorts of things to it. Basically, the next step that the PBX would take in this case is put whoever was calling outbound on hold forever. So go ahead, go to dial patterns. Once again, generate 7, 10, and 11 digit with toll free. And we will take out the EU as well since we don't. I should rephrase that. Nope, we're taking out the EU. Rest of these should be all fine. If you wish, you can enable notifications, so if calls are successful or if the dial pattern is matched. Once again, it's really not, applicable to our configuration since we're such a small system, but you can enable this as well if you want. Then additional settings, if you want to do call recording, keep in mind this will take up more space, so you will usually need more than about 20 gigs of storage, I believe is what we set it to, should you want to do call recordings or voicemail boxes. For now, we'll just hit never because we don't need it, highlight though, and we'll go ahead and submit that. And once again, apply configuration. Can I help you? Good boy. Okay, so now we have our phone server ready to go. We need to verify that everything's actually working correctly. And what more to verify than without your soft phone and making a call yourself. So we'll go ahead and I believe, yes I do, I have LinPhone installed. So LinPhone I prefer to use. It's like Zapper, it's a Zoiper. It's like Zoiper, but it's free, it's open source, and it's available to you. I have the Windows version. I believe there is a Mac version, and there's definitely a Linux version that you can download. So we'll go ahead, go into our preferences, and we'll go ahead and configure a new extension. Oh, may take a minute here. I'm going to go ahead and pause that video. Okay, so I've reset LinPhone, so we're on a fresh configuration. You should see a page similar to this where LinPhone is asking you, hey, we're waiting, what configuration do you want to start with? So in this case, we're going to go ahead and we'll use a SIP account. And we'll wait to put this in, but we will want it ready. Because what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and applications and extensions. And what your extensions are is each node on your phone network per se. This can be either soft phones, this can be something like a Cisco 2901. No, I'm thinking that it's a router. It can be your Cisco phones, it can be your Ubiquiti phones, it can be just anything that can send and receive calls. There's even some PA systems or intercom systems that support features like this. Regardless, this is where you're going to set them up, whatever device it may be. So to start out with, we're going to go ahead and we are going to go add extension, and we're going to go add new SIP CHAN PJ SIP extension. From here, we can set the user extension. This can just be whatever assortment of numbers. I don't recommend using phone numbers like 425 yada yada yada, or whatever your local country format may be. You're going to have your PBX all on a loop, and then things are going to get all wild. But you can set it to usually like a 3 or 4 digit, depending on how you want to configure it. For this example, we're going to use 1010 and display name. This can be whatever we want it to be. For now, we will just set it to Yeehaw, it's Jake. Some applications that are local to your PBX may use this, like the old Cisco phones I have. They'll show up, whatever the username or display name is supposed to be for that SIP address. Other devices, they may use this to be like, okay, we're receiving a call from this extension. What's the actual name of this extension? So we can display it to whoever's receiving this call. Outbound CID, once again, this can be used for when this extension is making outbound calls, if you wanted to have a specific caller ID when calling outbound, compared to setting it, PBX-wide through your trunk or outbound routes. Emergency CID and outbound CID we'll leave alone. And finally, we will want this secret. So our user extension is 1010 and our secret is this garbled mess. And how we will use this is our username, 1010. Display name, you usually want to set it once again to extension. Some software is finicky on this. I've never had an issue setting it with username and display name to the extension. I recommend it. Your SIP domain will be your address of your PBX server. In this case, 10.0.0.1.0.5. If this server has a domain name like freepbx.example.com, I'd recommend using that instead. Or if you do have a static address, use that. Something that won't change, because if the IP address changes or domain name changes for the server, you're then going to have to do it to the rest of the extensions and update the extensions configuration. If you can do that through something like Cisco UCP, great. Otherwise, have fun. And finally, our password will be our secret here, which I don't think that's right. Control C and Control V. There we go. Transport, UDP, and use. Now, we haven't saved this yet, so this is going to fail. So we don't need user manager settings. We don't need to set anything else up. We'll go ahead and submit it. And finally, we'll apply that configuration. So now we have LinPhone set up. We have our extension ready to go, and our trunk and outbound routes are configured. We need to test this. So what other than Rick Ashley? What we're going to do is in LinPhone, this number right up here, 248-434-5508. 248-434-5508. Just like that, we've confirmed that we can make an outbound call successfully. And to show off as well, I will go ahead, we'll take this and show you guys, first off, using our main number. For some reason, I show up as strike point. I have no idea who that is. And now, what we're going to do as kind of just a way to show off here, we are going to, where is it? Change our outbound caller ID. So actions, outbound caller ID, we'll make it 248-434-5508 just to show off. Make it VoIP MS still again. And with VoIP MS, you will need to confirm within your panel that you want your PBX to transmit the caller ID and not VoIP MS. By default, VoIP MS will use whatever phone number you've bought from them and then transmit that when calling outbound. So we'll go ahead and apply those changes, and I'll make that configuration change real quick in VoIP MS. Okay, I was not aware that this phone number has an established CNAME, so nope, do not try and scam me. Show it off here once again. Give it just one moment. Yeah. So now we've established that we can make outbound calls and we can change our caller ID. Our next step is inbound calling. This would be the action of receiving calls, i.e. I call the PBX from my phone or someone else calls it, whoever it may be, and we receive that call, route it, deal with it, and send it to an agent, an IVR, assistant, whatever it may be. FreePBX isn't super advanced. You're not going to get anything like Twilio has where you have some sort of intelligent routing platform. You still can use an IVR where it's press 1 for sales, press 2 for support, press 3 to disconnect the call, things like that. But you're not going to get any sort of, just fancy AI tools that Twilio has, basically. So let's get started and jump into that. It's pretty basic as it is. You really want to verify that you specified your POP destination in not FreePBX, in VoIP MS. What this does is when you, for example, you're in Colorado, right? You connect to denver.voip.ms because this is your POP destination. So you can send outbound calls to this destination, but this destination will also send calls back to you. So if you're instead connected to something like seattle.voipms or lax.voipms, then you're going to run into issues if Denver is your POP destination set in your account. Now, I already have this configured in mind. All we have to do is go ahead and go into inbound routes. Once you're in inbound routes, what you're going to do next is add inbound route. Your description can be anything. We'll just set it to default inbound route for now. Your DID number will be the number that you've purchased essentially from VoIP MS. This is what your trunk expects. If you use like another inbound DID, or if you use any inbound DID for that matter that you're not usually using, basically if you don't own the phone number, there is a chance that sometimes calls can go through that are unwanted. This can usually be people that are trying to mess with your phone system. I believe I had a call from Danish. There wasn't even a phone number attached to it. It just straight up said Danish, and it came from some other random server. So this is where DID number and adding this into a production environment can enhance the security of your phone server because it expects the DID. And then you can add additional security on top of that within trunks and such. We won't get into that in this video. I'll probably, take care of it in another one. But I would highly suggest at least adding in a DID number. You can also add in a caller ID number. What this would do is if I was to call in with, my phone number, we can have this route behave differently depending on who's calling. So maybe if I directly call it goes to voicemail, voicemail administration basically. If anyone else calls, have it ring the main IVR and go to a team. There's all sorts of things you could do with that. For now, we'll leave these both blank, which is basically any, match anything. CID priority route will be set to no, alert info and ringer volume override is set to none. We will not add a prefix to this. This is usually meant like if we received an inbound call and we had multiple routes, we can use this to specify whoever's receiving the call, hey, this was received from this route or this DID, depending on how you do it. And then set destination. Finally, we're going to set this to our extension. And the rest of this here, I prefer to turn on reject ringing charges. This way you're not trying to drain, your account should anyone try and flip charges onto you when they call you, basically. Anything else, I just leave it all alone, and we'll submit it, and we'll apply that configuration. Let that load. And finally, we open Lin phone right here. And we go down into phone. And we call our PBX. Just like that. Declines are not allowed here. So just like that, you now have a working phone server. I highly suggest playing with it if you're in a non-production environment. Just, playing with things, breaking things, and trying to resolve them, especially helps with learning how the system works inside and out. It's how I, learned with a lot of my things here. So if you guys like this video, go ahead, leave a like, comment down below. I will be covering more within the phone server realm and the telephony world. Lots of these videos are coming later, so it's lots going on right now. I'll save you guys the details, and I will be adding my socials down below. Right now the main site's offline since I'm moving servers around, but I will be adding a Cash App link below if you guys really think that it's necessary. I don't. I'm going to make videos regardless, so thank you guys. Thanks for watching. Tally ho.